Welcome back to Michiana Main Lines. As promised, we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to take a closer look at the South Bend to Niles rail line, and we've got quite a few pictures we can take a look at, and we've got some maps, and we've even got some abandonment information. So that's what we're going to do. We'll probably do a second part which will cover the Niles end of the line. Today I think we're going to just work from the Conrail main line up to Notre Dame and look at a bunch of scenes there, and then the next one we will do Notre Dame northward to Niles, including the street running on 9th Street in Niles. So here we kind of have a map to get our bearings straight here. Of course, South Bend and the rail lines. Here we have the main east-west Conrail Chicago line, and the line in question, the MC connector, runs right through here up to Notre Dame University, St. Mary's. And the MC connector, the part in the middle which it was called, is what joined the Michigan Central with the New York Central. It joined right there near Holy Cross Junior College. That north-south line was the South Bend Secondary, and then here we have the MC connector, which joined the two. So that's what we'll be taking a look at today, and see what we can maybe learn a little bit about it. And we have quite a few pictures, and we've covered it pretty well in video so far. So here, first of all, let's look at a Conrail ZTS map. This kind of shows more detail the industries. Here we see the connector area, a condensed portion of it anyway. This is very condensed. And the two major industries between Portage Avenue and the east-west Chicago main line, which you see running left to right at the bottom. We can see there's the old Drewry's complex. There was several businesses in there, one being the Martin's Warehouse, Camlon, and I believe it was, let's see, Centennial Steel, I believe. There was several small industries in there after Drewry's was gone, and loads were taken in there in the early 80s, maybe till about the mid 80s. Then there was a big fire there, and either one or multiple warehouses were involved, and then service kind of stopped. Here we see the Hurwich iron spur, actually South Bend Smelting, and also Pacer Oil used that. Hurwich Iron was shipping out loads of fly ash in the early 80s. I'm not sure how long that continued, but that was a couple of the businesses on the south part of the connector. Now let's take a look at the Notre Dame area. Same type of map, except unfortunately all I have is a copy out of a binder. But here we see the north part. There we see the MC connector joining up with the South Bend Secondary near Holy Cross. There was a passing siding at Holy Cross, and they showed a track going as far down as it looks like Pokagon Street at this time, which I believe was in the early 80s was the date on this. So there's the Notre Dame coal pile. You see the loop that crossed Douglas Road twice and their power plant area. And then up to the upper right hand corner you see the St. Mary's power plant area. They had a large looping spur, and they also had their own little locomotive, which we will take a look at later. So that kind of gives you a little bit of the layout industry-wise. Also to the far right you could see the end of the line there was Big C Lumber, which they were still taking loads in the early 80s as well, but then that shut off, and in the 90s it pretty much was just Notre Dame University receiving coal is all that really remained. So let's jump right in now and start looking at some pictures starting at the south end near the main. Here is Circle Avenue in South Bend. That's looking towards the northwest. There's the Adams Engineering big building you see up there to the left. Of course, Washington Street is a little bit farther up over there. That's the next main crossing. But this is how the track looked in the 80s into about 90 when it was pretty ramshackle. There we see a little bit of rail off to the left. I think that was a spur that ran right alongside the Hurwich building, which we see here. This again, Circle Avenue looking south towards the Conrail east-west main, Hurwich Iron on the right. There you can kind of see by that arrow where the spur went into the Hurwich iron complex and Pacer oil. The old buildings off to the left was, I believe, what remained of the South Bend Range and some other complexes there. But again, very ramshackle look to the track. Now we'll progress a little bit farther north. Here we have College and Orange Street. This was a shot of a coal train heading north to the university, switch engine power and caboose at this time. Again, this is pretty well covered with video. So this is a shot I don't think too many people have seen. Again, this track is all gone now. Normally about one coal train a week went up to Notre Dame, approximately 14 cars. Here we have another look at that same train. This is Werwinski Avenue. Usually the coal trains operated, it seemed, at least in the early 80s, about once a week from about April to November. They didn't seem to haul any freight coal up there in the dead of winter. Of course, the Drewry's complex was still going strong year-round in the early 80s. That probably about, maybe on average, 2 trains a week would go up and work that complex. Next up here we have College Avenue. Same general location there again, College Avenue. Same train heading northbound. Over to the right out of the picture would be Lincoln Way West. Power varied on this line. Sometimes it would be a switch engine, sometimes it would be a road engine like a GP38. I think it kind of depended on what Elkhart would assign the local. Up next here now, this is up near Vassar Street in South Bend again, the Holy Cross Church School parking lot area. This was a train returning with empties from Notre Dame, and here we do see a little bit bigger power, GP38 Conrail unit. I've heard that when they only had a switch engine, it could be rather difficult getting these trains up Angela Hill, a fully loaded coal train, because there is quite a grade, as you note if you remember traveling up and down Angela Boulevard. There is a pretty good grade out in that area, and the track kind of closely almost paralleled just to the north. Let's see what we have up here next. Computer's a little bit slow. Okay, this again Vassar area, Vassar Street area. This is the switch that led into the old Drewry's complex, which you kind of see off to the left. Straight ahead you see some excess roads, private roads that went into that complex. Again, there was quite a bit of business in there in the early 80s until the fire kind of put a stop to all of that. Again, not in real good condition track work here, but good enough to get the job done at that time. We'll get some more looks at that siding. Up next we have, there's another closer look at the private road. You can see how that's pretty much paved over. There was nothing going in and out of the plant at this time. I suspect this was probably later 80s, maybe early 90s. I'm not exactly sure on the time frame, but nothing was going in there at this point. Again, looking at the main gate there we see the Liberty Steel. That was one of the customers. You can see another set of tracks over to the left from days gone by, but this was kind of the main track that went in. But again, nothing being done at this point. Now kind of the iconic Angela Bridge. Everybody from the area is pretty familiar with that. Very high river level at this time. This was in the spring, definitely a rainy year, sometime in the 80s. Here we had a coal train heading towards the university. This bridge still stands today, and this of course is to soon become the coal line trail. I believe that they will repurpose the bridge for that. Here's the derailment. This is just to the south of Riverside Drive, Woodward Avenue. This was in November of 1987. This particular coal job had a very bad day. They ended up derailing the back part of the train down somewhere near Florence Avenue, and then they derailed but good up here. You can see that that car is just pretty much right in between the rails. The rails just spread apart, probably from all that weight and deferred maintenance. That load of what looks to be pig iron probably just added to the weight and didn't help matters any. But this day they only made it to the university with the locomotive, and I believe kept it up there overnight, and it took until the next day to get this mess cleaned up. But derailments, I wouldn't say were frequent, but I know there were quite a few of them in the later years, because well, you could see by that track work, it just wasn't up to snuff for heavy coal trains. Then up next here we will take a look at another neat shot here. This, of course, 933 as it's called now, but I always knew it as 31 in Douglas. This was a train either retrieving or leaving the hoppers, which were left right alongside Douglas Road there. And so that's where they would leave them, and then Notre Dame had their own locomotive, which would work the cars in their property, either unloading them into the coal yard or taking the loads into the power plant. Again, video covers this pretty well. If you haven't seen it already, there's a video of one of these type of trains making a retrieval and crossing 31. Here now is a shot of the Notre Dame switch engine, Notre Dame and Western unit crossing Douglas Road. Their coal pile was over to the left. This locomotive now is down in North Judson, Indiana, at the Hoosier Valley Railroad Museum, being completely refurbished. It's taking a little bit longer than they expected, but it is moving along, and this unit will probably be pulling excursion trains there, I would imagine, in the years to come. So at least that's one part of history that has been preserved. Even Douglas Road is gone now because the road was rerouted, so track in Douglas and this whole area is much different now than when these shots were taken. This probably was sometime in the 80s. So let's see what we have here next. I think it's a closer look at their power plant and tracks. Yeah, that's the Notre Dame power plant. They had double tracks there, which crossed Douglas Road and then went through their coal pile, which was double track. Then it was another single track that we saw previously that crossed Douglas Road again to the west of this location. But that's the way that kind of looked over there. That was the heyday of the power plant. And next we will see the St. Mary's power plant area. This was their switch engine that they had. They also received coal and had their power plant there too, but now of course the university has switched over to gas and went away from coal. Coal still went up here at some time in the 90s is when it stopped, because they were transloading the coal on South Olive Street, and then they were hauling it by truck up to the university, but then it all switched over. Here's a look at pulling the coal out of Notre Dame. This tractor coming onto, that's what remains of the north-south, South Bend Secondary. Back far in the distance you see the other string of hoppers that they pulled out of St. Mary's. So they will pull forward here and then back up and latch onto those cars farther in the distance, and then return all those empties to South Bend. This probably around 90-ish, I would imagine. I think that kind of takes care of the pictures, but now we'll kind of look here at a little bit of abandonment information that we have, which was kind of interesting. Of course, in the 80s is when Conrail was looking to abandon a whole lot of lines, and they did. This is their condensed version of a system diagram map that ran in the local newspaper, which shows the MC connector. The legend here, the main thing for abandonments was Category 1 and Category 2. Category 1 was anticipated abandonment or discontinuance, and I highlighted there in yellow. That's what the MC connector was marked as. They had that thing marked as anticipated abandonment or discontinuance, while they showed the rest of the line as owned and operated. And that's kind of interesting because, as we'll see in the next video, actually the entire secondary from Niles to South Bend was Category 2, which was under study for possible abandonment. So when this map was issued in the early 80s, it kind of suggested that Conrail was thinking if they were going to get rid of anything, it would be the MC connector, and then the coal would have been coming in from Niles. And this also shows the Drewry's complex was still owned and operated, so they would have done that out of Niles. Of course, we know that's not the way things worked out. The MC connector was retained. Basically, Notre Dame to Niles went dormant in the 80s and then was abandoned and removed in the 90s. And coal just continued to run up to the university through South Bend and the connector. But kind of interesting here. Also, we won't get into it in this video, but there's also a line farther south on this map that you might recognize. That there's that east-west line running down there. I didn't mark it. That was marked as under study. That was the line that served the south side of South Bend. Places like the South Bend Tribune warehouse, the scrap warehouse at Walnut Street, as well as the remains of the Plymouth Industrial track down to Calvert Street. So it almost sounded like they were looking to possibly get rid of all of that, which is kind of shocking at that time. Of course, that didn't happen. They retained that track and they retained that business. So anyway, this kind of concludes. Well, I probably better briefly just repeat again what did happen abandonment-wise. The Notre Dame coal continued till some point in the 90s, and then even the MC connector went dormant, and that track wasn't used until about 2005. Then in 2005, an investor with pretty good financial backing wanted to purchase the line and wanted to begin transporting the coal once again to Notre Dame, as well as running excursions. Well, there was a lot of opposition to that, and the city tried to do an adverse abandonment, which kind of forces an abandonment whether a railroad wants it or not. Well, that wasn't successful. But then in 2012, they tried again, and that time they were successful because the investor was no longer interested, and of course there was no businesses on the line that wanted freight service anymore. So then the line was removed shortly after that. So now everything is gone, and soon to be the coal line trail. In fact, I think construction is going to be starting now in the summer of 2021. I believe on the segment from Lincoln Way to Riverside, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this format with a little bit of this history and pictures, because there are a lot of pictures available. But that's all of the video I have for this line. Like I say, we will do a part 2, and we also will do this with some other videos that we have. There is some videos of some other lines that are not enough to do a standalone presentation with just video, but we can build it around something like this. So I hope you found this of a little bit of interest. Leave a comment. If you want to see more pictures, let me know that too. And thanks for watching. Have a good day, and we'll see you later.